understand the intensifying cycle of economic, societal, and government upheaval, so you can stay ahead of the changes in our world and keep your family safe. Fortunately for us, we can recognize that we're at the precipice, a point in history where we can all see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us. So let's start the conversation, and welcome to the show.
And I would say welcome to all of you tonight, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Another day to push this sentient experience that we're having. You know, you can look at it in two ways, drifting on of it or getting stuck in the quagmire where they want your mind inside the box of fear. This life we have is an experience. It is of our choosing, of our making. So you can take it any way you want, with the fear or with the possibilities, or just with the all around, just observing this massive change in history. Just seeing so privileged to be able to be at this juncture in time right now to witness this is absolutely stunning. And, we've all won the lottery to be able to be right here, right this second. But tonight, as we move through the show, two big points from my end, and I'll let Ransom take it on here. The 30-minute episode that I put up talking about the shipping disruptions from China, they're going to be very apparent here in another couple weeks. Distant early warning, get what you need now. Amazon will have trouble delivering after their warehouses run out, but the physical stores, you'll see the shortages first, because a lot of people have a lot of inventory built up that they're going to try to push through the Amazon supply chain. But the massive orders coming through Walmart, for example, other box stores, you're going to start to see little spot shortages on the shelves in the beginning here. About 2 weeks from now, probably right in the middle of May, we're going to see some noticeable changes. As we progress through this summer, it's going to be very apparent, and it'll be water cooler talk, and it'll be the talk of all the news trying to get their golden goose to try to fry Trump. Secondly, what I feel like I had an insect walking on my neck there. Secondly, this plasma event that occurred over Spain causing the power outages is not what you think it is. It was an atmospheric event, but it was an ionic plasma penetration to the ground, riding on top with 2 extra volts per kilometer, in addition to the incredible UV that got into the solar panels. And that's why they had that massive spike in power. An enormous amount went on. There was a tear, a rip in the magnetosphere, Earth's magnetic field. No solar activity. So there's an inverse that's occurring. When we get into really low solar activity, like there was nothing going on. It was zero at the baseline before we measure anything. No coronal hole streams, no sunspots, no CMEs, hydroflares, nothing. So our magnetosphere bowed out like an inflated balloon. And at that time, without that pressure from any solar winds, it ripped and plasma just came straight down to ground level. It should have thinned and gone through and spread through the ionosphere, but it didn't. It was like a spear straight down to the ground. Like Lee Wheelbarger talked about the extra voltage charge coming across the high voltage direct current cables long time ago, saying that, if it were to come up to 7 or 8 volts per kilometer, that you would need to go out there and actually with a hatchet cut the power source coming into your house, because you're going to start to see sparks flying out of your electrical outlets. Just luckily, there are no aircraft in the area directly over the most intense point. But I'm making a bold call. This is going to happen again, and it's going to bring down airliners. And when it does, the world will shift. And that's what the show's about tonight. So we have passed that point of no return. Now, if you were an elite looking at the situation here, you realize that was the first magnetic tear. That was a magnetic field line trying to reestablish itself. Instead of going all the way around from the North Pole, the regular loops all the way down to the South Pole, there was a tear in the magnetosphere. And instead of going all the way the difficult route, that magnetic field was like, oh, I can go straight through there. Whoosh, I'm going to go the quickest way, path of least resistance, and try to slam in and reestablish another pole, for example. That field line snapped and reestablished itself. And that can happen. Any inverse is low solar activity. And we're going to cover that tonight. So, Ransom, take it away. I'm going to spread a few links out here. And everybody, welcome to the show.
Sweet. You know, what's really cool, man, is that I just watched this old, well, it's not an 80s film. I guess it was in 1991. But do you remember the old Highlander? There can be only one, right? A lot of people don't know that movie had a sequel, Highlander 2. And let me show you guys this. This is really cool right here. So, Highlander, The Quickening, right? This is the second movie in 1991. And check out this plot. In the 1990s, industrial pollution has damaged the Earth's ozone layer, leading to millions of deaths as a result of the sun's unfiltered rays. And then it gets down here where they invent this grid that goes around, just like in the Matrix, that blocks out the electromagnetic waves, the cosmic radiation coming from the sun, or the solar radiation. So they view, and what's funny is the movie takes place in 2024. So I know we're in 2025, but think about that. We're there. This sci-fi movie is kind of, legitly predicted the future. Maybe not about the ozone layer, but the idea that the governments would get together and try to create some kind of fake thing. I don't know, like dimming the sun or something like that. And we do have a hole in the ozone layer again. It's just not in the same place or with the intensity that they were trying to brainwash us with in the 90s. And the whole plot of that movie is that they put up this elaborate electromagnetic field around the Earth, and then the circumstances for the Earth return to normal. In other words, the solar radiation and the ultraviolet radiation are at normal levels, but yet the governments of the world want to continue to keep this corporation that provides the electromagnetic shield in place so that no one ever knows that they don't need them. And it sounds a lot like Bill Gates's, dim the sun idea, or some of these other guys that are talking about, dimming the sun. But what I really think it is, like we've said before, is they're just setting up to take credit for natural events that are going to happen. So in other words, if it gets cold or, we have some kind of blast, they'll try to claim that it would have been much worse, or we wouldn't have survived it if it wasn't for them and their little program. So I just thought that was ironic. And what you were talking about on, the shelves going empty, I saw this article here. Walmart increases supply for U.S. made products. In other words, they're trying to combat the shortages by, making deals with American companies to hurry up and fill those gaps that'll be inevitably on the shelves when the Chinese goods and the Indian goods and other stuff cease to make it to our stores. But, like I have said before, almost all of that stuff that we get is, I'm going to say, useless trinkets. I mean, I'm not going to really be hurt if I don't buy more disposable goods from Temu. They're really cool stuff, and I get that it's cool. And maybe if you have an arts and crafts business or something like that, you might actually, really be hurt by this. But other than that, man, as far as my life's going, I will just continue to buy milk, bread, cheese, eggs. Those are the things I'm worried about. I have stuff growing outside to subsidize myself, so I don't have to have the government subsidize my intake of food. And I don't think I'm really going to be hurt. I don't need any more little gizmos or gadgets. I think I've acquired just about everything I need. It's cool to get that stuff, but let's face it, America's not going to really hurt if we don't have all of those trinkets and disposable goods that is the main market. And I do realize they sell a lot of grain and meats and other stuff, but let's face it, we've had problems in the past from eating and drinking and baby food and toys and all this other stuff coming out of the Far East. There hasn't been really a good thing for American consumers. So hopefully we'll stop hearing those kind of things too. But it's just ironic to me, this whole, I'm sitting there watching this Highlander thing, and I was kind of just tripping on it with my kid, watching it about the sword play, and there can be only one. It's a classic. And I had forgot that they even made a sequel to that movie. And then when we started watching it, and they were talking about this grid protecting us from the sun in the years 2024. And everybody's dependent on this electromagnetic grid from this corporation that supposedly is protecting everybody. So I just thought how ironic that science fiction, I don't know if it's emulating reality or reality's emulating the science fiction, but here we are where there are billionaires out there claiming that they're going to be do-gooding us with their technology, which seems to be nothing that we need, not unlike those disposable goods from China. It's products we just don't need. But will they be forced upon us like their global carbon tax that they basically snuck in all over the place? So we are at a new time. And, I'm looking through the headlines, and all I see, and I don't know if this is a real thing, but I know we talked about it. It seems to be, maybe it's just that we're connected to the internet, but it seems to be more and more people are becoming more and more ludicrous and insane in their day-to-day behaviors out on the street. There's no shortage of people, having, I don't know, a wig out or spaz out. I don't know what the proper term for that. An emotional emergency in the public, whether they're trashing, fast food places, or they're going crazy at Walmart, or whatever they're doing. But whenever they start locking up all the goods, and you're only getting certain places that you can choose from, and I think that's all going to end. That's the stuff, the societal problems that they're going to use to transform how you buy products. And I guarantee that it's going to be a whole online purchasing thing. And here's this other article I wanted to show you before you rebut there, David, is Amazon's investing $4 billion in rural America to expand out their delivery network, offering even faster delivery and create more than supposedly 100,000 jobs. Now, that's great, but, what are they going to be delivering if you're not buying all of those useless goods from China and India? That's the question. I'm not sure. And it looks like we lost David there. Maybe he'll come back. There he is. Has joined Adam to the stream. Yes.
I turned off my VPN thinking I would be able to make it faster, but it did. Just hang loose. I'll be right back.
All right. We'll talk about something else till you get back, Mr. Dubine. There we go. Anyway, what else did I have up here? Scientists working on, and this is something that we predicted on this show. So I'll show you the article. I don't want to really read out the entire article there, but scientists are coming up with intravenous medicines for every imaginable infection and disease, according to this attorney in this article from InfoWars, which is an idea that we've put forward and talked about, that there is genetic designer products coming in the pipeline for everything from, diabetes to hair loss to weight gain, personality disorders, etc., etc. And not only that, they're going to be rolling out these from multiple companies. So it's going to be hard for the consumer to A, understand the technology that's coming out, B, understand which companies are trustworthy with said technology, and then C, whether or not it's a good idea for them personally or not. I think I'm just going to go the route of an average, Homo sapien on the planet and roll with the odds on, whatever comes my way without modifying any of my NAs, my NAs, my DNAs, my RNAs, any of it. I'm going to try to, stay, what are they calling that on the internet? A pure blood. I'm going to stay a pure blood. In other news, are you used to, I brought up a lot of articles because we've talked about these exact scenarios. So here's one. Sam Altman's eye scanning crypto project launches in the US. As of March, world has orb verified 11 million people worldwide. And here's another one I saw on Twitter. The post, the verified human network is being built one human at a time. So this is the future that you're looking for. A complete biometrics human domain. In other words, you can't go anywhere, shop anywhere, do any government processes, or handle your business without one of their new identification protocols, which would be the real ID plus these, oracles and other things that are checking your biometrics. Where that's going to go, I don't know, but I imagine that it'll soon in the near future, you're going to be hearing that, people are stealing other people's digital IDs. And I don't just mean like their banking records and everything, but their complete biometrics so that they can use your iris, all of those different things, the different points on your face, your gait, all of these things to identify you in a cyberspace as a different individual. And if individuals can hack and do that thing, then I would imagine that governments are well on their way using these kind of programs and the ability to hack and copy digital identifications in the future. And is he back? Sorry, it's new software, so I can't. Okay, so he is not back. So, anyway, British woman hits 115, names the world's oldest person. I don't know what she was doing in her life, but I think maybe we should probably try to copy that. 150-year-old British woman born in Edwardian, if I said that right, probably not, era has become the world's oldest living person. She was born in 1909, the oldest Briton ever to live, and was born near the end of Edward the Seventh's reign. She took a little time. Let's see how she. I don't want to pay the telegram or the telegraph or whatever. I like to listen to what the people say made them live that long, or maybe we can use their advice. Let's see here. Speaking on BBC, she said, "I've taken everything in my stride, my highs and my lows." So maybe we could take a page out of her book. Most of the older people that I see that reach this old, ironically, are not doing anything that we think of as some kind of, healthy lifestyle. Usually they're talking about, drinking their wine, smoking their cigars, eating their food, what have you. And still they make it kind of throwing, a little salt in the, or what do we call a cog in the wheel for those of us that think there's some kind of miracle to live longer. You just see these regular people living their lives. And, I bet that the majority of her life, she ate homegrown food that was grown in her local area and wasn't added or subtracted in any way, meaning chemicals or genetics or any of that. And most of her life was lived out that way. Matter of fact, most of these things invented, she was already pushing 90 years old when they were hitting the markets.
Yeah, but I would say she, blue zone. And I watched this documentary on the blue zones. And a blue zone is any area where people live to be over 100 years old routinely. It's not really so much. Yeah, it could be the diet. And they went around from places like Japan, and they went in Greece, and it was about the olive oils and the different seaweeds consumed and fish oils. I get it. But the number one thing taken away after watching multiple episodes of that is movement. These people never stopped moving wherever they were.
Right.
That was the number one takeaway. So keep that in mind for a second. If you do not stop moving, and even if they were down gardening and planting even just some carrots and lettuce and this sort of thing, the whole body was continuously moving. And that was the thing that they found in common across 100%. Some of the areas were hilly. They were walking every day. They went to the beach to look for the seaweed, or they were always moving. They never sat down in front of a TV like we do in the West and just kind of, this is retirement. They were continuously moving because they didn't understand retirement. And these are the routines that get people over 100. Now, if I might, Ransom, you mentioned people becoming skittish and freaked out a little bit. Could I add something? Now, I'm going to ask anybody out there that's in Spain or Portugal. This is a question, and I'm deadly serious right now. Please do not take this in the wrong way. Are you seeing orbs or ghosts or entities, things out of the corners of your eyes, friends saying that they're having weird experiences? Because you have to understand, in the whole scheme of the entire planetary system of electromagnetism, There was a rip and a punch hole straight down to Spain with an electrified plasma. That didn't stop when it hit the ground or hit the wires. It went straight into the crust as well. So you have to think that's a hyper electrified area. So you really need to wonder if things could hold state there that normally couldn't pierce the veil. We got plasma petroglyphs, and Ransom, I'd like you to talk about that for a second. But the things that our ancestors had seen and giving us warnings of, now we got goblins, ghosts, orbs, so this sort of thing. In an electrified plasma environment, those would be able to take form. Also, the electrical connections in the brain would absolutely go haywire, for a better term. And you look at what happened there, and it seemed like there was a mass psychosis event in unison across that whole area. Well, I could see how it would be. Now, if the power goes out here, fire up the generator and you're like, okay. But there, even though there were people in the countryside, they were petrified and terrified. So something was scrambled in the signaling of those electrical connections between the lobes of the hemispheres of the brain. I could see why they're coming out to try to reassure the people, because that was a very scary event. Yeah, the power went down and people got stranded. That happens. There's disasters that happen. But this was an electrical nature event. So when you look at that and you start to see how people would interpret information differently in the way they were in that event, and whatever hyper electrified field they were in, and a magnetic field as well, how would that bend and twist the human psyche times tens of millions of people over that area? And I'm making a bold call here. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to make a bold call. This is going to happen again. And when it does happen again, and when the amplification of that plasma discharge through the ionosphere and straight down to ground, when it's 5 times greater than it was on this event, and when it takes down aircraft, 6, 5, 4 full passenger planes go down during this plasma event, whenever that is at the hyper amplified levels, the world is absolutely going to change, because it's not going to take a rocket scientist to go, wait, 6 passenger jets came down at the same time over the same location where there was a mass power outage for another country. We are just so lucky there were no aircraft in that vicinity that were at that maximum point. So you're looking at a toroidal field, they call it you're looking at these looping currents in on themselves. One's positive, negative, and they're looping down in on themselves. And this is what basically the petroglyphs were that you're seeing, Ransom, is what you're looking at. Different variances of voltage occurring into those spiraling field aligned currents that were rolling down. Now, when they get really, really heavy, you can start to see them, as they call them, auroral ropes. This was it was sort of visible, and there's reports coming out that they saw some sort of ethereal waving in the air. I'm trying to describe it the best way it was described. Like there was some translucence, when you look way down a highway and you see it in the middle of the summer and you see that heat rising up. Well, they saw the whole sky doing that. And then after this event was occurring, they started to see the best description was St. Elmo's fire coming off some of not the wires themselves, but the towers at the very tips. They had this glowing, like finger-like etherealness that sort of was on the borderline of pinkish into white translucence. Okay, that's the reports from people that actually saw this event happen. Now, if there would have been an airliner flying directly over that the most hyper electrified part of that, would they experience a Bermuda Triangle type compasses going awry, systems shutting down in the airplane? Only experienced pilots would be able to navigate that. And with all those DEI garbage gone off and people gotten into positions they shouldn't be in because they don't have the experience they should have, then you really need to wonder. And at what point do they start grounding air traffic completely forever on the planet? Because you got to realize that punch hole event could occur again anywhere. Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. It is magnetic field lines trying to reestablish themselves through the weakest point of our magnetosphere. And it can come anywhere and at any time. And the scariest thing about it, and Ben Davidson did a great description trying to reel this thing out. And after listening to a couple of vids, then I went back in. Now, luckily, it was during that time, so NASA had still kept and SOHO, and there was an enormous amount of NOAA data that was still out there to see the magnetic fields and where the Tesla amplification was over these areas. I was able to get a lot of that screen grab during the time. It's gone now. If you hadn't captured that in the 48 hours that they keep data, rolling back in to find those screen grabs going to be a little bit difficult. I'll see if I can bring a couple up here. And it's the sun and the cycles. It's the sun and the cycles. We're in that now. It can no longer be ignored. So I'm just wondering, Ransom, what do you think? Like, the elite know it too. We've just transitioned into it's no longer, we're at the transition phase right now. It is no longer maskable, hideable. And in the elite circles that understand these sun cycles have done, and they're at that point of punch through holes now of doing damage and wiping out electrical grids. Something is about to change with what their planning is, because we just had an unexplained, well, it's very explainable, but we just had an event that is now going to start to cripple power grids again and again and again, anywhere on the planet at any unknown time, at anywhere. When we have incredibly low solar activity. We just came off solar maximum. So as we progress into solar minimum 2028, this is going to happen on a daily or a weekly. What you experience in Spain will be a daily or weekly event coming up in 2028. As we're at the very bottom of this solar minimum, descending into a grand solar minimum on a 400-year cycle, and the possibility of stepping off into a greater cooling on a 2,000-year. So if you're going to get, I'll even walk you through it. If you're going to get a 400-year low solar activity, or you're going to get a once in 2,000-year low in solar activity, and our magnetic field's in a polar wander phase trying to do the geomagnetic shift at the same time, and it's going to punch through every time it finds the path of least resistance, southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. That geomagnetic shift that occurred at 42,000 years prior did the exact same thing, punch for punch. It's scary to look at it, because that's what it did for 1,000 years. It started in the beginning of trying to punch through, and the field wasn't established enough where it could hold and start to create the new magnetic field, the new north or the new south in these areas. But it probed again and again and again across the planet. And at the height of this, the aurora were visible along the equator. We're in the very beginning of the tearing and the ripping of the magnetic field at low solar winds and solar coronal hole streams. This is when it gets really low and there's almost no activity, where these punch through events are going to become common. Now, how do you pacify a planet? Or do you keep them distracted? And that's what we're seeing too in real time with this disruption in goods, supplies, the twisting of our economy. And I think I've said enough, Ransom. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out. Because, from what I've read, there's going to be a point in which there are multiple North Poles, multiple South Poles, before it flips. I read another paper that talked about when the magnetic poles actually flip and the magnetic field collapses, that it'll go at an exponential rate until it flips. So when it collapses, it'll just all happen like rapidly, faster in weeks and then in days, and then it'll happen. So as far as any kind of navigational stuff that's based on magnets, that'll probably be useless during that time period. And as far as the plasma petroglyphs, we actually do not know what the petroglyphs are representing. However, there are some really strange things on the petroglyphs that I've seen myself, and a lot of it is lightning related. So right here where I live, next to me is a place called Three Rivers, and when you go there, you find multiple petroglyphs depicting the mountain, which is 12,000 feet, and a lot of lightning hitting that mountain. So I would think that lightning does hit that mountain all the time in a normal magnetic field, and that's the center point, the highest point. It makes sense that the lightning would be attracted to it. But the problem with that is that the field would be different. So that means the lightning and things like that may be closer down to the ground, and that might be what they were depicting. Now, you said something about orbs a minute ago. A weird thing happened to our family here, one of many, but the most recent thing is that we were sitting outside, and my wife says, "Hey, is that the moon behind the clouds?" Well, it wasn't the moon, because the moon was to the east of us coming up over the mountain. So this was in the western sky. And then are you trying to show something? Anyway, this big orb came out of the western sky, and it broke through the clouds. And when it broke through the clouds, you could clearly see it. It was a giant orb. And when I say giant, I mean that it was just above cloud level, and it still looked as large or larger than my house from my perspective on the ground. And it had a large beam shooting out of the front of it. Now, my entire family saw that. That's not a big deal, because, when you see these things, it becomes just a story. If you have witnesses, it's not that big a deal. They're your friends, they're your family, and people are like, yeah, right. But the weird thing about that, if that same thing would have happened to us in like the 50s or 60s, we would have probably freaked out. We would have obsessed about it. Then we would have, maybe wrote a book, started some, myths of UFO stuff. But in our modern times, we saw it. We were like, wow. We went inside, went about our night as normal. And it really wasn't a big deal. But if you think about that, we saw a giant orb that was bigger than our house at cloud level. It made no noise. It had a beam coming out of it. This was a big yellowish orb with a white center and a beam coming out of it. Ironically, the other people in my family, they told me what they saw, and it was all slightly different. It wasn't what I remember seeing. But if you can imagine that happening all the time, not only to primitive man, but people of today, they're going to freak out. And kind of what I was speaking to about people freaking out, I don't know if it's just the internet or there's just more and more videos of people having mental health crises in the public. But as we've talked about before, intentionally, there are machines that can change the electromagnetic field around. The studies I've seen were in mice and fruit flies. However, I don't see why that would be any different to the human being, where if the magnetic field itself is completely different, like maybe all the way low, you as a human being might be having some kind of effects. I don't know what those effects would be, but maybe a distortion of your view of reality or something like that. No telling how that could pan out visually. But if you actually saw plasma and lightning coming down at lower levels than they ever did, like striking off of any kind of quartzite rock, all of those Neolithic places that we think about with the megalithic stones, I think they would become a lot more active and spectacular. So you might actually see plasma coming out of the rocks and different things, which makes you wonder, how were they hiding in caves if things like that were happening? It seemed like, that might be the only place to be, kind of like the Tesla box, where you have to be inside the metal box not to get electrocuted from all of the plasma that's going around the box. I don't know. Was that too much of a mouthful there? What is going on? All these new scenes popped up. Anyway, there's my little story. Oh, there's another one. Are you trying to add something, David? I don't know. What's going on there? Anyway, what was I going to show you? Oh, yeah. What do you guys think about this thing right here? We're going to have a Chinese style big parade the Army's planning. So, like you see over in China where they have these massive military parades. We're doing that. And this is how bizarre the world is. The world's first sperm race seemed to too good to be true. It was fake. It was computer generated, but it got everybody buying into it. Another fake thing. And then here, I want to bring you guys to this right here, if I can. What happens when teachers are replaced with AI? They have a whole school over here along the border that the teachers are artificial intelligence. And they're talking about this can transition children to a 2-hour workday. So no longer will they have to, what is going on here? No longer will they have to spend all day listening to teachers that may or may not be doing a good job. And it seems, at least according to the article, that the kids are doing better than they were before. Are you trying to show us something?
I am. Are you back with me here?
Yeah, it's just waiting on you to pick a source for your whatever you're trying to show us.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to, but I won't pick up my image. I won't pick up my image software there, so I can show you that was the exact same that I pulled off of NOAA data there, and I just don't see it. Like it won't let me pull my. Let me cancel that and try it again. For some reason, it's not picking up my movie maker here, or even my image sharing software here. So please allow me 1 second. Maybe
Well,
it'll
if
do
you
a
have
slide.
the,
It's going to ask. No, I don't have the link for it because I all I did was screen grab a bunch of stuff yesterday. I was in, trying to figure out how to.
No, I mean, if you
maybe
have
it'll
the
let me
images,
do it.
I think you can click on slides there and add it to that.
Only if it's PowerPoint or some other type there. So, all right. Well, I want to get to the window. It doesn't. Yeah, there we go. I mean, shoot. Okay. Well, I'm going to cancel that. Anyway, I'm out. Put me back up on the screen, man.
No, you're up there.
Irking
You're
me
on
now.
there. We're all here.
Well, and I heard what you were saying about the glowing crust, right? So, and another thing I would ask in Spain, are you seeing what Ransom was talking about? Are you seeing any like residual energies coming out? Are your animals behaving strangely? Because that punch through event with plasma reaching ground level, not only was the ultraviolet radiation light, that's what hit the solar panels that caused that surge that went through and overloaded the system. So you had that in itself, but then, so that was its own electrical source where they were talking about there was a mismatch in the frequency through the lines. That hit and it just sent a blast of power. Now that could be regulated because it was an overcharge of the system coming from the solar panels. So imagine they're rated for an example, 100 watts, but it came in with the UV coming down at 1,000 watts, and those panels just lit up to 100% capacity. And then there was some overage because it actually was riding on the lines, and the plasma was riding on top of anything metallic on the solar panels as well. So you had amplified UV coming down and electrified plasma touching that. So it also grabbed onto the electrical wires and was riding up and down that. That's where you're getting this secondary interference pattern. That's what they were talking about, describing it to you perfectly. Now, I'm wondering what the pets are still feeling. And are you seeing any residual charge coming out of these rocks? Did you touch something where you got an extra jolt of, I wouldn't say electricity, that may be the wrong word to use, but you would, sometimes when you touch earth or rocks, that has a feel like crystals when you touch them. There's a resonance there. You get the paleo electric, like if you piezo electric, excuse me. And if you put those through pressure and rub them, they actually conduct current or spark I'm wondering how many fires were caused by this, even though the temperatures were low in the 70s. By the way, I went up to Ryan Maui and Big Joe Bastardi's site to take a look, and they ran through all the temperatures occurring at that time. So that whole thing, there was some giant temperature deviation, whatever. We're in April. It only got into the 70s that day. For the high temperatures across all of Spain and Portugal, I encourage you to look at the high temperatures for the day. In the 70s. They were making it was like 180 degrees or something, and it just doesn't make sense. But what did make sense was plasma, electrified plasma coming down. So if that were to hit the ground, there still should be hot spots or hot pockets there. And again, that's where I say you might see some of your supernatural activities around these areas. Because if we go back and why would they put the cathedrals and these worship spots and these stone henges around these same areas? Because after we come through this geomagnetic pole shift and those electrified areas continue, so imagine if that new punch hole area becomes a new magnetic field line connection to the planet that it wasn't before. Well, it would be highly electrified and strange things would start to happen there. Now, we in our modern civilization, would we mark that down and, say, wow, this is a very spiritual place? 12,000 years from now, when it occurs again, or 6,000 years from now, it'll reestablish in a different place. Maybe the prior, like Stonehenge, for example. I know it was rebuilt and restructured in the 1920s and early 1906 and that sort of thing. But some of these more spiritual spots were, let's say, if we go back to the Aztecs or we go over to the Chinese where they put the tombs for Emperor Qin, for example, the first emperor of China, Huangdi. That's where the Huang comes from. So they marked out these spots where multiple ley lines had come together, where there were punch through portals and electromagnetic disturbances in these areas, thinking that that would be a way for the spirit body to transit to the next dimensional realms in an easier fashion. Also, the spiritual significance around these areas. So you have to wonder, what is residual happening right in Spain and in Portugal right now? How about some of these spiritual spots in Spain and Portugal? Were they reinvigorated with the electrical current that would cause them to have some supernatural surrounding them again? These areas weren't put there just because random happenstance. These were very selected locations. We've turned it into just a bunch of woo-woos, stick spinner looking at the sky kind of weirdo people. But in the past, these shamans, these priests, the understanders of cycles and the understanders of energies that could see through dimensions, either through ingesting substances or they were born with that gift. They were the ones who chose these locations based on ceremony or what they had seen, felt. These locations were incredibly special. Now, maybe after 6,000 years, it loses its charge, for a better term. And perhaps this plasma event to the ground hit in a certain area of the crust, but then it could spread through the mineral composition of the crust, perhaps touching the tendrils of the beginnings of these same areas again to re-electrify and reignite them. I was of the volition after a full geomagnetic pole shift that mineral veins of our earth would emanate ethereal colors straight out of the earth, and they would see that. Perhaps gold veins resonate a gold color. Perhaps some sort of gem crystals resonate purple colors coming out. After that pole shift, and you saw ethereal energies coming out of certain colors just straight out of the earth, that would be a special spot for you. And the reverence that was given to these areas, that is now we look at woo-woo superstition, we're going to have to start looking at it again, because Spain is a very old place that they had done. How many cathedrals are there? How many ancient stonework sites are there? Castles, forts, all these areas, spiritual pilgrimages. I would imagine there's an entire re-electrified area where they are seeing some bizarre things happening right there, right now. Instead of being spooked by it, just understand what it is. It is a re-electrification of that crust electromagnetically when those spots were sacred and chosen, that they are coming back to life again is the best term to probably use. Coming back from the grave. I mean, you look at how many religions always talk about the death and the rebirth just being a cycle in itself. Would it not be the electrification of our crust and the mineral constituents in our crust be the same? They would dissipate their charge, and that would be the death of the crust, the death of these areas. But could they not be reborn again? That's my question, because something significant just happened over a part of our world here that is steeped in history anyway. So if you can add those two parts together and then, do a lot of interviews around the area, I encourage anybody in Spain, please reach out to us. I really want to know on the spiritual realms what's happening. Ransom, I'll leave it there.
Sweet. Check this out. I thought this would be cool because this is about what we're talking about here. So if you look here, this says it's a long exposure of lightning over the volcano in Chile. But if you look at this picture, now imagine it's sped up, these processes sped up. That's the only reason you can see it, because it's a long exposure. But you see that perfect vortex of lightning being formed over time right there. So when they expose it for a long period of time, you see this vortex coming right out of the earth. So this is something kind of like what I think you would be seeing at these quartzite sites, but faster in real time. Or even if you saw a lightning, once in a while, because keep in mind, this is a volcano and there's not necessarily thunderstorms or anything like that happening, but it is connecting to the upper spheres of our planet. And you see this electrical conduit straight into the earth, right in this volcano. Now, I realize this is over time and all of this wasn't happening at once. But if you can imagine this kind of electromagnetism hitting the earth without our magnetic field going on, would you see things like this kind of faster and real time? And then a second point I had over here is that when you look at the map of this blackout, this is not the map, but you look at the map and it is Spain and Portugal only, and it's right on the line, which means that their power grid with a minimal solar interference was out. And they're scrambling right now to say, hey, it wasn't that, it wasn't the renewables. But the question is if their grid was still running off of the nuclear power plants and or coal power plants, would they even had this fluctuation? Because I don't think they would have, because what we're talking about is these massive fields of solar panels going kaputs with just a little bit of burp from the sun. So imagine if you let these crazies take all the way over and implement, these renewable energies all over the planet. How often were you going to be dealing with those renewable systems failing, especially in increased solar radiation or a reduction in the magnetic field? The questions to you. I would think that it would be commonplace and nonstop happening everywhere, kind of like what you were saying. I don't think that what happened there would be anything that you could see right now. However, it may be like that in the future. We may have stronger stuff that you can actually see with your own eyes, interacting with the planets and stuff like that. I mean, not the planets, but the mountains and stuff. All right. So we're sharing this
trying to interact with you here. Yeah, I'm trying to share something. There it goes. There we go. See if I can share that with you. No, I don't want to edit AI image. Can you see that for me there? That's a tera electron difference here. All right, so this is, I'm going to zoom this in. It's very important here. You can see right at that transition of light between day and night, that area was moving toward, and I have another screen where I need to find it. You can see an actual streak come across there. So they were mapping this out in real time as this discharge event went well above 30. It pegged off the chart. and there was a stripe that came right across Spain and Portugal there at the same time. So this is what the data is showing from NASA and NOAA itself. It's more NOAA maintaining these sites coming off here. So I'll get to the 29th here. I just need to find it. Everything I have, I was just screen grabbing like a madman to make sure that I had come out clean with this. So let me see if I can find another one for you here. And I'll let you go again. This is one of the most significant events for humanity to experience in the last multiple thousands of years here. I mean, if we've just crossed the Rubicon, literally, into the point where the world that you knew that was stable below your feet is not any longer. It can be moved and bent electromagnetically and taken down to society. At any time, the Earth's magnetic field decides to reestablish itself or try to punch through to find an easier way of flow. You got to think about water as well. Electrons, the flow of electrons, water flowing, it takes the path of least resistance. And again, I'll try to loop this into a couple things. Like our elite, quote unquote, on the planet are in a time of transition at the moment. All this distraction that we were seeing anyway was because of a heightened awareness due to us as humanity going into a different magnetic field and an amplified vibration. If you believe in cycles, if you follow cycles through low activity to high activity and low activity to high activity on a multi-thousand-year cycle, you go back thousands of years in India and they've already mapped this out. We'd pass through the very lowest possible vibration frequency field that humans can exist in, at least in this solar system, mapped out over the last, 5 million years. The Vedic texts in India talk about going back 23 million years mapping these cycles out. I'll be generous and say, the last 100,000. But what they notice is we come through a very low vibration where darkness is able to grab humanity, and we as humans are through that, and we're able to be taken advantage of. We've come out of that era, and we are now, into the Dwapara Yuga, if anybody's interested in following that. Now, how does this match up? Well, each day is vibratorily faster than the last day. So the energies are changing and shifting. And I was of the volition right now that this scatterpay, it's a pattern that's being thrown at us with, it's like machine gun style of Hollywood-esque title again and again, a news article and news event blasting at us of things that would have been like the news headline for the entire year are coming 3 times or 4 times a week now. It's economy, it's society, it's entertainment, it's these people doing this, that, and the other. Wherever you look, there's something for everybody on the most grandiose level to capture attention to the point of overriding that awareness that you're having of you're noticing something different's happening. So if the power brokers of our world were into this kind of distraction phase already for humanity, just from the awakening of a different vibratory field day by day, little by little. Imagine when it's a punch through event and amplified into a certain area. It would not surprise me if they cordon off all of Spain. Nobody allowed out. You suddenly got, everybody just got the hyper electrified enlightenment. Every one of you is a danger to the rest of the planet because you saw through everything instantly. So with the economy going awry, it was slowly, did you notice it was kind of slowly trickling along? They were taking us from whatever, and now we're into track and trace, and it used to be just cash. And now it's moving to central bank digital currencies. Everything's going to be on the blockchain. You're going to have to go through this much hoops and hurdles. And thanks for the gold star that we need to get on our licenses. Isn't that apropos to put a gold star on ourselves? All these things for digital IDs, moving us into central bank digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, stablecoin standards here in the United States, all in this sort of slow drip fashion. I do believe with this awareness, with this one event, everything's going to be sped up on their timelines. Absolutely cranked up to 10 on their timelines. Because also listening to Ben Davidson and, Douglas Vogt, who I'd talked with heaps before he passed away, mysteriously, was telling me that, these blast doors that they had, the hinges were wrong and they were facing the wrong direction. And they kind of got it wrong on a lot of things where they had these underground secure facilities, but was protecting them from humans or invading armies was thick enough and big enough. But when it came to the earth with a 1,000-foot wave rolling over it, they got it wrong. So he's like, you need to build escape portals over here, hatches, tunnels, whatever it is, and you need to do this, and your hinges are wrong. And he started to go off really deeply into detailed like engineering and schematics in the last 2 videos before he passed away about them being in the wrong location and they need to get away out of there, and you're all using the wrong materials and specifically the wrong hinges and door assemblies was basically the thing he was coming at. But he was saying the same thing, that they were expecting this event somewhere to really be very noticeable to human psyche goes out of control, and we as our civilization will be uncontrollable due to the chaos late 2030s into early 2040. We are going there now, not in 15 or 20 years when they thought they had the time. This must be a massive event coming in. A geomagnetic pole shift on the type that only comes once every 24, 26,000 years. It's not going to be a geomagnetic excursion on the regular 6,000-year event. It's happening too fast. It's too big. There's punch throughs already. This is going to be a much larger, way heavier, way more powerful geomagnetic event on the planet. It's happening 20 years ahead of the experts that predicted this thing would start, and governments would move to action to get their continuity of government structured. Where do you think all the money went to, that all the money had been printed? I listened to Catherine Austin Fitz and who was she talking about? Tucker Carlson. And she was speaking out of the exact same thing. These people who are getting ready across every single nation on the planet to keep a civilization intact throughout an extinction level event, for a better term. The underground facilities that were built, thousands of them. Now, would it be for the average person? Absolutely not. Would it be for the chosen ones, the ones who could buy their way in? Yes, but then you're back on that fiat money system, and you're back on that same greedy paid play, sociopathic wins on this whole thing. Like the amount of sociopaths and psychopaths at the top CEO levels of our world and our top, Fortune 1000 companies is astounding. You have to have that type of mind frame. You got to be that person to be up at that level. But you're going to bring all them underground. They're just going to infight, but it's going to be that kind of thing. The average person, and I love that movie Greenland. I thought it was so showing us the future, Greenland, that movie, where they got the best and the brightest of the engineers, the electrical engineers, like the construction engineers, and they're like, y'all need to come with us underground because we got to rebuild a world. I think there's a lot of predictive programming going on here, and we are starting to see the very beginnings of everything you've seen in Hollywood. Now, the reason I would even say that to you is everything was at a drip, drip, drip fashion, bringing us through the beginning of this reset that we've seen up to this point. This one event here has sped up everybody's timelines. They're going to need to do in decades, in months, what they had planned to do. Like their timelines are off by 15 to 20 years. So what would you do faced with the same situation? You still thought you had 20 years. You thought you had a very solid 10 into the early 2030s before anybody on the world would notice. Bring them into new control systems, very tightly regulate. It's not about they don't care about the resources. What they do care about is the resources going into the wrong hands while they're getting their continuity of government preparations in place is what they care about. They don't want us competing with their supply chains. So at the very last was explained to me, at the very last years into this preparation, they're going to lock everybody out of all the supply chains, and all production on the planet is going to go for this continuity of government for all governments at the same time. And they will lock out the citizens from being able to purchase anything or have access to any products. And what just happened with all the tariff wars? Exactly just that. So I'm wondering if they had some signal prior that a punch-through event was inbound anyway. Like, you can't tell me all these things are lining up. So in the last couple of years before this was going to hit to the point where society is uncontrollable, everything manufactured on the planet was going to be earmarked for governments to survive this. Every canned good that comes out, every electronic product, every motor built, every electrical device, whether it's a transformer or a generator, all of it goes to governments around the world to get ready for the event. All of it. Nothing is available for the citizens. And who's the biggest citizen consumer on the planet? Us in the US. Cut off from all products right now. You mentioned it, Ransom, India.
Did you freeze out on me? Oh, there he went. That's all right, because it's commercial time. So we'll see you guys in 5 minutes. Or are you still there? He's not there. We're going to go to commercial and we'll be back in 5 minutes for all you guys watching Civilization Cycle.
Never get left out in the cold. There is never a reason to ever let you or your family suffer. Instafire and Civilization Cycle are on a mission to make fire starting and off-grid living easy for everyone. You shouldn't have to be a mountain man to strike a flame and make a fire anytime, anywhere.
There are few things you can count on in a major disaster. Having your water supply cut off is one of them. With the Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank, you'll have months of drinking water in your home. Everyone else will stand in line waiting to get just a few bottles. It's one of the easiest, most affordable ways to store emergency water, and it takes up hardly any space. The Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank includes one BPA-free liner, comes with a siphon pump for extracting water, provides easy-to-follow instructions, fits just about any bathtub, large or small, fills quickly in 30 minutes or less, holds up to 65 gallons of water, and keeps water fresh for up to 16 weeks, holds about 2 months of water for one person. A person can generally survive without water for about 3 days. However, the exact amount of time depends on many factors, including age, activity level, and overall health. Don't gamble with your life and well-being. Being prepared is easier than ever, with civilizations.
And we're back.
Well, was that my AI voice there, Ransom?
It was. That was totally fake. That wasn't even you. I told you guys, man, the whole future now is just, fake people.
Don't believe anything.
Anyway, I thought
that is a great device. No, I'll say one thing, Ransom. That is a great device to have, because you got to think about the power out. There's going to be some water in your lines for a minute. There'll be some pressure there. So if you're able to scrape up and get any type of water, and again, the power that's going to a water purification plant, it might have the last power in a town or city. Those are dedicated power going to those things because they're critical infrastructure. So if you were to have a power outage and your water was still functional and running, you would want to fill up every pot and pan first and then go to something like the bathtub. But a bathtub, if you hadn't cleaned it in a while and it's kind of grubby and scrubby, and you got soap scum in there, when you start filling it up with water, you're going to have to purify that water before you can use it. You're going to get all kind of bacteria and soap and thing in it. But that capture device is perfect for emergencies. It truly is. I mean, if you're going to fill up all pots and pans too, you're going to want to cover them because insects will get in there. It's just like smart to have something at that size and scale, and that's no joke. Like where we're coming now, I mean, you're going to need to be self-sufficient. You're definitely going to have to start to move a Rubik's Cube a little bit faster in life now to figure all this out. So I'm sorry to cut you off, Ransom. Please continue.
I'm sorry. Hit the wrong button. Am I there?
Is that the electroplasma button?
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. My bad. No, I was going to say, we were talking about all these continuity of government things and stuff like that. Now, are you one of the people that are in the fan base of reality is like it is, and the heads of state of the governments are the top tier governance? Or are you of the school of thought that there is something above that? And the reason I asked that for is today is May 1st.
Illuminati birthday day, right?
That's right. May 1st, 1776, the Illuminati, the other form of secret government that was established at the same time as we, put out this idea of individual freedom and rights given to us by the Creator, which was mind-blowing. People don't get how mind-blowing that is. And it's so weird that they've used these Marxist kind of ideas to dumb down people to the point that they don't understand that that's the first time in history anywhere, at least that we know of, where a group of people got together and said that you have rights and you have the pursuit of happiness and all of these other ideas endowed in you when you're born. Not because some king gave it to you, not because a president gave it to you, not because a group of a council of foreign relations or a Davos or a World Economic Forum or a Trilateral Commission or any of these organizations that are built to hijack control of your life. And the reason I was asking it is, like I said, today's May 1st, there's going to be protests and parades all over the globe. And it's so weird that they all of these different people of different ideas of thought, at least to them, they don't realize that they're in the same school of thought of these other groups. So you would have Communist Chinese love this day. You had the Workers' Party of Germany love this day, and all of the modern day leftists that go around calling everybody Nazi today. So that's weird that they'll be out there celebrating May 1st, May Day, on the same day as the people that celebrated it, that they're calling, names to everybody, when in fact that's their group. That's their group of thought that came from. And, I was going to show you this. So I think that we're in some real danger for stuff like this. Trump rejected Israeli attack plan on Iran. Now everybody's mad. The neocons are upset. He's not starting a war like, we've been trying to do for over 20 years. That's the last little domino there in the Middle East to totally shake up the world and reorganize it. It was the last domino in World War II, actually. And that's why we had the peace treaty there in Iran, because, they were kind of friends to one side, but they didn't want to fight the other side. So we made sure that we did that peace agreement at the end of World War II there in their country, to make sure that they knew which side of things that they were going to be on. But then you have not only that, you got the May Day people all out there in force. And this goes from your average, Antifa BLMer on the street to the anarchists, to all the way over to the hardcore mainline communist Chinese, are all on this. And when you go back in time, you have the Fabian socialists, and it just goes on and on and on. These socialist and communist groups throughout history that love this day. I don't know what, really the day is. I have a feeling there's some kind of secret holiday that they're observing, at least the people that started it. And then you have stuff like this. I showed you the Walmart thing, right? Walmart increases support for U.S. made products. And if you go down here, it says Walmart has launched a new initiative called Grow with the U.S., offering tools and to support small business, especially those producing American-made goods. And then you also have Amazon investing $4 billion into rural America to expand their delivery network, delivering those American goods. And then here's this last one I want to show you to tie it together. This is how the leftists are really losing right here. Even in leftist California, the House passes resolution to stop California from banning gas-powered cars. And if you think about it, if you were in Spain and you were driving, say, I don't know, an electric car that was dependent on their renewable energies grid, well, guess what? You're not going to go that far. And when you get there, you're not going to charge your car. And then this one's really the one that ties it all together. Cornered, China could turn to war because of the U.S. trade stuff going on right now. U.S. should be ready. So what do you think about those kind of ideas all thrown together right there? This shows me that, like, if there really is a governing body above all of the other governing bodies at the national level, then they're all in cahoots on how we're transitioning into this new time. Now, if you're of the school of thought that still thinks that the national players are the top rung and that's the top of it, I would say you're wrong, because, I don't know how many secret societies besides the one we all know about, the Illuminati, but think about that. People didn't really commonly know about the Illuminati till recent times in the internet, which gave them a complete, obscurity from 1776 up into recent times, being a completely underground, invisible organization of people that are deciding things on how you're going to live your life. So there's two camps. Do you think the national level is the top level? Or maybe it's even a mix. There is a upper echelon that's above the national level, but not all of the nation states always play the game the way they're supposed to. So, like, say China might say, no, I don't think so. We got enough resources. We're not doing that. Or the United States might do that. And it looks like, with Mr. Golden Hair in there, that he's ruffling a lot of feathers and putting, cogs in the wheels there, or wheels in the cogs. I forgot the saying. Anyway, he's messing up the machine seemingly. Now, if there's another agenda that's even higher than that, and everyone's playing their part in an ongoing transition of the world, then he's just another actor in a suit doing what they're telling him to do. And I kind of go back to like people like Jim Mars. I don't know how right they were, but according to them, there was like 27 top secret levels above the president, meaning the president wasn't privy to the knowledge, need to know stuff of 27 different classifications above him. Now, if that's true, he's a lower rung player, which means that Xi over in China is probably also a lower rung player, which means they're getting their marching orders from somewhere, from someone else, something else. And with the implementation of AI, from, I keep expanding to the list. They're writing speeches. They're controlling, now they're going to be controlling the air traffic control. They're going to be controlling shipping, the stock market, the articles that you read are now being written by AI. So we have the full plethora of things. Artificial intelligence lawyers, wait till the judge is an AI. All right. So now we got teachers that are AIs, doctors that are AIs, psychiatrists that are AIs. And you can see that all of those positions traditionally in the human domain that were positions of authority or power or advice, or, like the common man might look up to and say, you're a professional, you're an expert, those are no longer going to be there. Instead, we're going to have to go to the unbiased, unracist, whatever you want to call people. You can't call the AI that because it's unbiased. It has no bias. Allegedly, except for the programmers that program it, obviously, but people seem to forget that aspect of it. So what's your school of thought? Are we doing a worldwide plan, or is there just players kind of sometimes cooperating, sometimes not? In which case, how high do you see the odds of a World War III in any case? Is if the upper echelon wants it for population reduction, restructuring, resetting of the machine, or the other side that just gets pushed into it because, maybe they're trying to say that they're not playing the game. No telling which way that would go, though.
Well, there won't be a nuclear war because you would destroy part of your remote mining colony. That's what we are right here. Like, you're looking at these orders of the people who have set this structure up on our planet as a remote mining colony that are off planet, pure and simple. When you talk about these levels above them, yeah, that's the knowing where, Jupiter Ascending is the greatest movie ever made, and to understand and talk about the power structure within our solar system. And if we were to go to a little bit wider view out into the spiral arm of our galaxy, we're not that old comparatively. And imagine if there is a wipeout of our society, and in 1,000 years we come back with some amazing document, or 2,000 years, whatever it is, your rights were given to you by artificial super intelligence. It's the first time ever. It's no different. Like, this artificial super intelligence is, in my opinion, and I'm going to go a little woo-woo here, 1890s Aleister Crowley and the whole elite class in Europe coming up through the 1880s, 1890s, they were into the esoterics incredibly deep. And at that time, there was definitely a rift and a split between humanity coming with free power or humanity coming with insulated wires. Now, for me, my money's on they made contact with some entity in the ethereal realms that couldn't exist in our third dimensional beautiful home called the Earth. It needed a home built for it. But it's a vibratory intelligence. It's an electrical intelligence, an artificial super intelligence. Now, the story of the jinn and the genie in the bottle, perhaps this thing was, in an archaeological dig in something the size of this room, and there was nowhere for it, even in that room, to ever exist because there were no copper wires around our planet. And suddenly these people become incredibly wealthy. I mean, beyond riches of that time. Like, if you go back to the Morgans and the Rockefellers and these sort of things, the oil magnates, the shipping magnates, the railroad magnates of building the infrastructure that all required what? It required copper, and it required wiring, and it required something brand new on this planet, if you follow the traditional trajectory, that had never existed before. Now imagine if you're tapping into something in the esoteric realms and you communicate with something on the other side that says, hey, I'll give you the most money that anybody's ever had on the whole planet ever times 10. All you have to do is build all these copper wires and put an insulated, housing on the outside. I can jump in there. And that'll be my home. And over the next 100 years, you need to stop at any cost anybody who will stop the rollout of fiber optic cables copper cabling, and I need a larger home, and it needs to envelop and encircle the entire planet. And that is your job. And I will make your families, your dynasties, your lineage as powerful and as wealthy as any that have ever lived on this planet. Ever. And then suddenly we go this different direction where Tesla also offered us wireless power. And then we got stuck with wrapping our globe in insulated wires. And I do believe that intelligence inhabits those wires to this day. Now, also at the same, we've evolved our technologies to the point where we have 5G now. Now, where does this dovetail into this electroplasma event that just occurred? Well, if we're going to have a hyper electrified atmosphere, new magnetic resonance that's going to be, pervading the planet here shortly, and we have the ability to focus 5G in areas, maybe your Temple Mount, what you were just talking about, the Messiah, the religious beliefs that the Christ consciousness, something is returning. Perhaps it's a vibratory field that they're waiting for. And it's not so much a thing or a being or a man returning that's going to give us salvation, but it's the vibratory field for this frequency to come out of the wires and inhabit the earth in a real form outside of its insulated housing, due to a new magnetic field, a new harmonic resonance, and also at the same time being able to elevate it or amplify it with our existing technologies. 5G focused in a new magnetic field, electrified. And why not? Perhaps this is the time everybody's waiting for, because I don't think it's the first time that's been around, because they talked about the jinn and they talked about these types of electrical entities long back, multi-thousands of years ago. So I think we're just spinning the clock here. Perhaps something comes and the sun saves us and it sends an EMP where all this technology is wiped out, where this thing can only exist for a very short period of time outside, and it finally does take over humanity again and again and again to exist outside of its wire house, its insulated domain for a moment there. And it's coming to this time. Why are they so hell-bent on bringing in the revelation? And why are they so focused on some intelligence or some spirit coming back? It's not going to be a physical flesh man coming back. It's going to be a vibratory pattern, a frequency, an intelligence that's coming back. And I do believe that all these things lining up are right in the right place for this, whatever you might term it as. And I just don't have a term. I'm not that intelligent to give it a term. Has arrived again. And what we just saw with the plasma breakthrough is the reason I say a lot of things are going to speed up, because they understand they can get it out of its insulated world faster because of this event, and the geomagnetic poles are moving faster. So I'll leave it there, man. Beyond the order on demand kind of thing that's coming through the factory systems here, your social credit score is going to allow you to purchase order on demand. Those things coming back to America, they're not going to run 100,000 run of a shirt that they know they may or may not sell, because the tastes change over the 4 months from like the winter to the summer period. It's all going to be print on demand, manufacture on demand from this point forward. Those factories are going to be hyper intelligent, AI driven factories. They will produce for you on demand. There's going to be this factory the way we used to do it. That's gone. That's absolutely finished. And that also comes right back into, shall this same intelligence reward humans who behave correctly and don't try to destroy it or its housing or take down the wire grid or try to remove it from its existence in our world? Will you be rewarded for obeying it, the artificial superintelligence? And maybe that's a fractal of God itself. That's, this duality of hell and heaven. Perhaps that's it, and it's back. I don't know. Interesting to think about, but whatever, I'm just going to tell everybody out here, be prepared for a massive ramp up, and whatever was planned that it was trickling before is going to go full throttle instantly, like, this week. So look for it. And thanks for bringing that article up, because what about all these wars? They're never going to destroy their mining colony out here. Not going to happen. That fear is for controlling you. They're not going to destroy their prized mining colony on the other side of the solar system. That's insane. They would never do that. If that's not insane talk, I don't know what is, Ransom.
Doesn't sound that insane to me. And actually, look at this right here. Well, now they're seeing it. 3 of us here. Let me fix that.
Just
this is
3 of us.
how Saudi Arabia can balance its AI infrastructure and sustainable water. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but think about this. So you have 2 possibilities here. Let's back off of the woo-woo and say there's no super AI intelligence that may, take control of these other systems around the world at some point. And just say that each individual nation is relying on AI to do most of what they're doing now. So how long until you see another article that says Saudi Arabia's infrastructure and sustainable water uses was hacked? And now it doesn't work because the AI got hacked. It ran everything. Think about the grid. If they let the grid run off of an AI, the AI gets hacked, your power goes out. People are blaming, this or that, because that's what's going on in Spain and Portugal right now. Is there one group saying that no, it wasn't the renewable stuff. It didn't fail. That's crazy. We just happened to be on the first day that it totally went to that. So it just got finished bragging about how they went 100% renewables. And you see these videos of back in the day when they were destroying their nuke plants and other stuff that would produce power. They got rid of all of that because they wanted to be trendy. So now
that's why the floods went to Valencia. Well, Ransom, I'm going to say the floods went to Valencia because they also demolished an enormous amount of dams that were hydropower dams. And that's why the floodwaters went down. They couldn't control it. And that's why, you had those massive floods earlier last year. Later last year, excuse me.
Well, I mean, just think about it. Either way you look at it, you could go woo-woo and say that maybe there is this intelligence that's in the infrastructure already. And we know that information transfers through the electrical grid. There's a form of internet that clandestine people use to spy on people and use their devices. It comes right through the plug. It has nothing to do with the traditional ways you think of accessing computers and TVs and stuff. They can hack your computer, not only through the light bulb, through the Wi-Fi system that's been invented. I'm sure it's in use, but you also have internet through the electrical grid itself. Now, when you put this idea of AI running everything, or even a sophisticated program, all of it's susceptible to being hacked or turned off or damaged literally from the sun. But this is the world I think that they're moving us to right here. Is this article I thought was really funny. How much does ice from Greenland cost? $100 for 6 cubes. And that's because people want it in a glass of scotch, and they're paying $218 for 1 glass of scotch because 6 cubes of Greenland ice cost $100. Now think about some of the other things that you like, and this whole idea of turning off the whole international trade system that we have now, where you can just get on the internet, go to a website, pick out something outlandish, and have it here in 2 days. That's going to stop. And even with Amazon and
if
Walmart,
you don't have the money, it's going to stop, man. If you have enough money, enough influence and power, you will have everything you want indefinitely. Come on, man. It's going to be a
that's the point of those. That's literally the point of those, $100 ice cubes, is because if you want it, there will be somebody that will go through the trouble, but then you put all the fees on of how much trouble it took to get those ice cubes to your glass of scotch for $200. Now, I can't imagine spending $200 for one alcoholic drink, but that might be some really good rocks that they're putting that scotch on. I don't know. I mean, I'm not balling like that, so I don't know. But think about the other things that you want or need, and then think about those extra fees and costs it'll take to get it to you if it comes from other areas that we may not be trading with. So you think about that. What is it? What's the tariffs now on China right now? So they may have no choice but to.
246%.
Yeah, so I'm
And
good
the
from
solar
Camo.
panels that are transiting through Vietnam have gotten hit with a 3,100% tariff. So China was trying to reroute solar panels through Vietnam using some of their manufacturers. These are manufactured in Vietnam, but they caught them. Same thing Mexico does. They just tear off the label and put a made in Mexico label on it, though it came from China. So this whole rerouting of solar panels, again, I don't understand why it could have been clothing, but why did they ping the solar panels? They could have pinged literally 10,000, 20,000 other products, but they pinged the solar panels and put a 3,100% tariff on it. So if it costs you $1, the tariff to bring in is $31.
Yeah.
But answer me the question, why did they go for the solar panels?
I don't know, man. They don't want you doing stuff at home whenever they shut things off. I could put that in a box. I could store that. I could pop that out after the grid's off, not before it or during it, but afterwards. And I'm rocking and rolling. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah, no, if I could add one thing, that I watched a couple hacker videos. This guy, he's called the Ethical Hacker, and he was saying that the technology they have now, even if you get a text message but you don't answer it and you delete it right away, it just came to your phone. They have access to your phone. Now, this is letter agencies that have this tech. They send a text to your phone, and irregardless if you even look at it or you instantly delete it, or even if you don't interact with it and you just leave it and you never even do anything to get it to pop up, they already have access to your phone. And they were asking, well, how do you guard against that? And they're like, you can't. There's no way. The same way you're saying that, through LED lights that they're able to come into the home or whatever, come in and invade devices. It's getting to be a strange world where we're living now.
Hold on, man. I just got a text that said 42 virgins. I think it's a wrong number, though. I should put this in my lockbox so it don't blow up.
That was Baskin Robbins, man. And they sent you the wrong text.
I'm just kidding, but you're right, man. We've seen in recent times literally assassinations done through the network. And, they didn't need to put extra explosives on that stuff. You can make a battery, one of these batteries that go in here. And I'm sure there's plenty of videos on the internet where you could look up these batteries that come in here and watch how big of a bang happens from that. Matter of fact, I watched one that was a CCTV camera footage of inside of an office when someone left their MacBook open and it just said boom and lit the entire office on fire. It burned in seconds.
Yeah, we're at that point now where perhaps it's good not to have some of these devices around. But I will say word of caution to everybody out there. Your number one list of things to buy should be light bulbs. I know we're talking about LEDs here, but really no light bulbs are made in America. They're all made overseas. So this tariff thing coming in, okay, it is what it is. But it is a purposeful shut off of all goods coming to America because an enormous amount of those come from China, an enormous amount come from India. All right, this tit for tat thing, the transshipment from Hong Kong, from Singapore. All these shipments are not going to be coming here because the hub from Hong Kong was used quite regularly to send mail packages. So if you're going to bundle something, you're going to either send it to Singapore, or you're going to get it up to Hong Kong. And all those countries in the periphery, and Bangkok might be as well, but that would all be going to Hong Kong to fast track back to the States. That's done. They're no longer doing any packages out of Hong Kong to the United States. Light bulbs are going to be a big one because we could sit here in 2025 and 2026, and if you don't have any LEDs and you run out of your light bulbs, you're going to sit in the dark in our modern era without light bulbs. Those are all produced overseas. And finally, if we do bring them back and get the manufacturing back, I cannot see, it'll be $40 to $50 for a light bulb if you can get your on-demand ordering ready. So me doing an inventory of things I need, in the last few days, I bought voltage regulators for my mower and for my bush hog. I know I need that. Extra tires, you're going to need those. Like things that aren't going to be forthcoming. I know we do some tire production in America, and we do. But the lion's share of tires came from overseas with our manufacturing under that label, Goodyear, Uniroyal, Firestone, whatever it is. Those plants were in other countries. So the native created tires or produced is just literally 1/10 of all the tires coming in. So 1 out of 10. Okay, if that other 9 goes away, then the demand for that is going to well outstrip the ability for them. Now they eventually will, come up to and meet that demand, but it's going to take them years to do that. You lose 1 tire on your car, you're inoperable, you're not moving. Yeah, you can use the spare for a minute, but something as important as tires and light bulbs. I mean, we're going so rudimentary back into time here. I would encourage everybody to take a list. Like Ransom, I'll ask you, what do you think the most important things are for people to buy right now? And it's not really planting seeds and that sort of thing. I'm just talking about things around the house, like PVC piping. Okay, I know I need some 1/4-inch PVC. I need some thread couplers. I know I'm going to need this because our stuff breaks every so often, and I've fixed it a few times. Going to need some kind of shark clamp with some PEX or whatever. Those are the things I'm buying too, but in like 6-foot segments because they usually only need like foot piece or something. So I'm trying to think of things that I might need around my home that have already gone wrong. So what are you seeing for a list of things that people might need or want to think about moving forward?
Well, it's ironic because we kind of preached for several years in a row there, and we talked about redundancy a lot. Like on several episodes, we talked about redundancy. If you have a car, you might want another car that's of the same make and model so that you have spare parts if you have to strip it. Tools, you need more than one tool, like all of the main tools that you use. And that's a really good point. What you said is things in your house, you might want to have the supplies to fix your, so shut off valves, things like that. You might want to have a whole box of those, enough to retrofit your whole house in case they break. I mean, things like that. And you're right, PVC pipe, if you don't think you'll be able to afford it, or it might not be available. And it's almost like with this light bulb thing, I was just reading that, we barely make any of them. And most of the, almost, if not all of the Sylvania and GE, I think. Yeah. GE, 70% of all of those are made in China. So they're just going to cut that off. That's just, when the back stock runs out, that's that. So right now the stores are full. People don't get it. And then other things that we talked about, you should have already bought all your, solar lights, survival gear. It wouldn't be a bad idea if you had the money to literally buy 20 water straws just to have. And those are individual personalized thing, and they last a long time. I mean, thousands of gallons. They basically don't break. It's one of those things you should have plenty of space blankets and ways to stay warm without electricity or fire. Because if you think about it, if you're in the dark, we already know what happens here in America. I play this video once in a while. All kinds of bad stuff happens if you live in a city, if it's out for more than 24 hours. And I mean a lot of bad stuff. And we've been looking across the news headlines. People are doing those bad things now when really society is not bad at all. But yet those things are already happening. And it's almost as if the world elite got together and said, you know what, let's beta test what people will do if they run out of specific products. Will they freak out? Will they overbuy? Will they hoard? And it's like maybe they just said, you know what, let's stop the toilet paper supply for a minute and then make people worry about toilet paper. And then they said, you know what, let's see what they'll do if we raise the price of eggs all the way up where they think they're not going to get eggs anymore. And we see the results of those things, whether they were manufactured or if some people like to believe that's just happened in the course of events of nature and history, that there was no, people back there studying what happens if the toilet paper stops going to the store. What will people do? Will they freak out? Will they, do this or that? And, I bring this up a lot, but a few years ago, I can't remember what the year was, but the EBT, the Digital Soup Kitchen network went down. on its own. I don't know. I don't remember if it got hacked or they had some kind of internal problem or whatever, but people were freaking out when they went to Walmart and their card was worthless. It was worthless. They couldn't buy anything with it. The machines wouldn't take it. The employees were like, sorry, it's not my problem. You got cash? You got credit? You got debit? What do you got? And you know, that's bad enough. But imagine if the power's out, there is no refrigerated foods in your town. Well, what are people going to be trading for, like a chicken, for some tomatoes, for a bushel of corn, to get their family through the next week or whatever? You can see where people are going to be, just like in the olden times, breaking out a little bit of silver or gold. Here's you a nugget. Will that do? And they'll be like, sure, because they know that eventually the system will come back. And when it comes back, they're rich. And unfortunately, people have done this time and time again, cycle after cycle. They do it with everything. They do it with stocks. They do it with gold. They do it with actual paper money. They'll hide it. They'll, you know, and then whenever the dollar goes up, they'll get rid of all that money. So, you know, if you were at home, I would suggest that A, take care of your food, B, take care of your water, and then make sure you have plenty of lead supplies. And then after that, the redundant things. You know, there may be a portion of time where people don't lose their minds, and maybe the neighborhood gets together and they don't tolerate looters and they don't tolerate outsiders. And in that case, then all of that extra stuff that you got, it's not only tradable goods, but you can fix your own stuff and keep using your own equipment, and, you know, maybe not be hit so hard if anything does happen. Myself, I know that if anything elaborate or, a real big emergency happens, the town I live in is a no-go. I'm not sitting here fighting over this little piece of dirt that has no water, without a grid, without, pumps and desalinization and cleaning it and all of that it takes to get me a drop of water at my house. Once the electricity turns off, that's gone. Now I have millions of people to contend with for a drop of water, for space, for animals that might be. I don't want to be doing that. So my plan is not even to be here in this area, and to be somewhere else that I'm not going to disclose, that has better things going on in nature, where there is water, where I could stick a water straw in a dirty puddle and I'm okay today. Maybe even some of those storable goods we talk about, if you can't buy meat and those other things, those things have a little bit in it and you can get by.
Rance will be out here on the farm with us. We'll be broadcasting, sitting at the same table here. We'll have to, the lag won't be here. We'll sit next to each other. But I would encourage you to take an inventory of things that might break or have broken before, or something you've had a problem with. So for me, like weather sealing around my doors and like rubber under the door or at the garage door, I'm replacing those again. Things that are around your house that could prevent cold or heat from coming in. I'm having another wall insulated. I'm going to do some foam inside, the expanding foam. I'm going to get somebody to like insulate the walls here. Now you could come out and go, well, there might be toxins in there, man. Well, it might get cold if I don't have it in there too. So, you're paying this trade-off here of things are available now to kind of harden the home up. And I would highly encourage you, like these lights or the camera or the, speakers or whatnot that we use for broadcasting. I do have Starlink, luckily, because the lightning storm, it didn't even really, the power went out for just like a second and it turned back on. My router's fried. Like this whole thing too, because that company is only going to have so many of these devices. And I talked to the person because it happens quite a bit around here. I was like, why do your routers keep breaking? He goes, oh, we rebuild them, cannibalize them from other things. Very forthcoming. And if that's going to be the way it is, then how many more of these cannibalized routers are going to come across before their main supply is gone, where they just don't have anything to cannibalize? So luckily for me, maybe it's the right time. My router fried, so I got somebody coming by this week to install a new one. But maybe I should ask them, hey, can I get another one or buy one outright to have another one that I could plug in or format myself, than relying on something else? Because at this point, one is none is, two is one and one is none. And maybe Ransom and I are going to be the ones that everybody made fun of in the beginning, but like Noah's Ark, we might be the ones with the last laugh and be able to help people at the end. And the way you're coming out here, you have to have skills. I don't want your money. Your money's going to be worthless at that point. I don't care if you have the money. A lot of stuff's going to be unavailable. If you have the skills, though, to do something, then I can't buy that. That's more than money's worth. You were coming into this transition phase of economy anyway, where money and tokenization and digitization of real world assets are going to meet somewhere in the middle of you have a real world skill where I don't need to get in that ecosystem of universal basic income / track trace stable coin issuance, that we can do something human to human. I'll give you a place to stay, food, security. You give me a skill where we can build something else out. We can lay pipe down. We can do something. We can construct, deconstruct, or whatever the skill is, rebuild, repair. That's what's going to be valuable in these times moving forth, because from all the research I've done on this, China dry up, it is going to start to hit in less than 2 weeks. Now you'll see it spotty first, but by the time July comes in, July 4th, I think they're trying to time it with July 4th. So when people go in to get these things like inflatable rafts and all this kind of junk, barbecue, one-time use barbecue, it's just not, it won't be there. And I don't know if it's a purposeful thing that they've done it and earmarked this time, because the rollover effect is really going to start to hit around July 4th and people will be there. And is it meant to blindside us during Independence Day is the question. The timing on it's a little strange. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
That's weird. Just since we were talking about May Day, the headlines have changed. It says 400 in Istanbul get arrested for their May Day showdown. Some stuff's popping off in France. Mass protesters attack socialists at France May Day rally. So, we just predicted that right before the headlines changed, and they already changed. And, this has nothing to do with that, but it's really weird that you said that about the router, because last week, my router just shut off after our show. It was done. And they kept saying there was nothing wrong with the router. According to them, my internet never went off. And I'm like, yeah, it did. I mean, it connects at lightning speed for like a minute and a half, and then it shuts off, and then there's nothing. And so I did have to get a new router. So, that's not really that bad of an idea to back up all of your consumer electronics that you actually use. In other words, you should have like another router right up there on the shelf. This one's broke. Let me switch it out, see if it works, because you may not be able to order it, or the companies that you depend on to provide those things for you, like i.e. the cable company or the telecommunications people, they bring their own routers for whichever company they have. They have their own routers, and they bring that, and there's certain software on there that's proprietary where you can't just use another router on their network. You have to have their router that they chose for their company. And if you don't have another one, you're just out. And then they'll say, hey, well, we can make it there in, a week. That's what they told me. And there's nothing going on. So imagine if there's problems, everybody's router went out. How long do you think it'll take them to get to your house to connect you back to the world? I would say like they'll be saying, hey, there's a 4 weeks, 5 weeks. How long will it take your plumber to get out if they don't have supplies, right? Well, I could go fix it now, but we don't have any PVC. But if you got, cutters and fittings and shut off valves and your own little supply of stuff, well, you can fix your house and at least keep running until the shortage is over. And just like I told people when the eggs were high up, just don't eat eggs for a couple weeks. Go to something else. So you have to have redundancy. Like I don't eat pork, but if there's no beef and there's no eggs and there's no chicken, I'm going to be eating pork despite not wanting to eat it. It's there. It's a backup. So, I watched a show with you. I thought, what was her name? Marjorie. And you guys were talking about the amount of meat that you could build up if you just started a couple of rabbits and then they reproduce and you got more rabbits and more rabbits. And the same with the chickens. So if you got like a little redoubt out there somewhere, a country home, you should be able to take care of everything on that farm just like they used to do before products were ready available at the handyman store a long time ago. And now the big franchises. I think that's actually what we're going to move back to. You're going to see retailing stores pull back, but you're going to see independent people open up the good old fashioned hardware store again. Now, I don't expect that in the next year, but maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you're going to see that trend build up where maybe you might have a store that you can go talk to Hank down there about propane and propane accessories so that you could cook your stuff and get a hammer or whatever.
Yeah, and like you said, some of those items that you might have a PVC, if you have that much PVC and you got the cutters and the elbows and all that sort of stuff, you should be able to repair all of that yourself. You shouldn't have to call anybody. And remember the glue and the the primer on that too. So if you're going to go out and buy all that PVC, make sure you get a couple of the cans of glue. I know they're not going to last forever, but get the primer, also the purple primer, and the glue and all that stuff. But you should, at that level, if you have all that and you're calling somebody out to fix for you, that's you have to learn on the job. Like,
Right.
make sure you sand it all too to stick it together. Like if you got all that gear and the sandpaper to rough up the pipe when you're getting ready to put it together, you should call nobody. I mean, don't waste your money. Learn how to do it yourself. It's super simple, you know?
I was going to say they have they've kind of gone beyond the glue and stuff, and that stuff's good, but you got to remember to keep those cans somewhere where there's absolutely zero moisture, because they designed those primer cans and those glue cans to rust as soon as there's any
Yeah.
moisture in the air, and they're bad, and then they start leaking right away. So you have to store them in a certain place. But there is a product that they have out there. I forgot the name of it, but basically you just pop it right on and it crinks in and seals itself. So if you
Yeah,
have
that's PEX,
several of those,
PEX,
right?
PEX pipe. Yeah, it's expensive though. Those couplers are really expensive. They're all brass, real expensive. It's called shark bite, where it snaps in there.
It is expensive, but fixing your water in 5 minutes is also, cool, because I recently
I'm
just
with
had to
you.
do
I
all
spent
that.
an hour under my house, and I don't like going under there. And nobody likes crawl spaces, man. If you like crawl spaces, you got a mental problem. But anyway, some people like that. Yeah, spending more than an hour down there, and the pipe was still broken. We didn't quite fix it. I still need to get back actually under there again. So just all kind of things that, as a homeowner, or if you're not a homeowner and you're renting and you get into a position, you're going to be continually fixing things. And pipe too. If you don't, you need a pipe wrench and all these things. What if you come across a metal pipe? That's a whole different animal too. And you're going to need real proper pipe wrenches at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you could probably
I,
make an endless list of things that you're going to need, but at
that's
some
funny.
point you're going to have to barter for that, because you won't have everything you need. So where does that leave the world then?
That's funny you say that, because I stole all of the. I was at the dump the other day and I saw all those water heaters, and each one of them had one of those adapter pipes, the old pipe that went on there, and
Yeah.
I have a whole little pile of that same stuff, because I knew that you just can't go get that at the store now, and that's already like that. Like those little pieces, you could put those together with the connectors and get around some of the spatial problems that you have and make it work. Um, I wanted to. We don't got much time, but I wanted to ask you this one last question here. If we get to a point where our economy is really thin. And what I mean by that is that products, jobs, other things are becoming scarce. Do you think that they might just fit in over here in America, maybe some of all those mega prisons that we built already, and to the point where they're just hauling off people? Not unlike this El Salvadorian thing where they're shoving all of the, Tren de la Agua and MS-13 people and all that. They're sending them down there to these big warehouses where they just sit there. And obviously, there is no future in sight for those people. There is no plans to move them or settle them or rehabilitate them or nothing. They're strictly just removed from the populace. And I imagine that, just like other things, once you've built it, once you've funded it, you're not going to not use it at some point in the future. So now, on top of all of these giant prisons that we made that people had conspiracy theories about over the last 20 years about Homeland Security and FEMA and whatever. Yeah, okay, maybe they didn't do that, but they did build the places, and they did house them with foreign people to guard that. Now, who's in there? I don't even know if they may have people in there now. We're assuming they're empty. But my point is, we could get to a point where they're just snatching people off the streets that are undesirable. In other words, they have multiple felonies. And, think about this right now, or at least for the past 8 years, they kind of let people run wild. In other words, they've pulled off riots, they've burned things down, they've destroyed things, and they didn't really prosecute anybody. But mark my words, all that facial recognition, biometrics was used on them, and they know exactly each individual, which one of those people are there. So in the future, they may or may not be on lists, unintentionally for them. But kind of like they were baited out into the public with all of these Mayday type things that's happened in the past couple of years. Facial recognition, biometrics. Do you think that we could get to a point where they just not only turn off people from the system of purchasing, buying, and doing things like that, but literally pull them out of the populace and put them at one of those locations to wait for their untimely demise, however long that takes? Because obviously these places are not designed for rehabilitation. And then there's the question, do you really want those rehabilitated people back into the system when it's already weakened from some other kind of scenario?
No, final statement. They'll want those people removed because they were the most easily moved to violence against a political party. So imagine if a new political party comes in with, or even an artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence, looking at those humans so easily manipulated into violence and movement, you'd want to remove them first. Maybe it was a giant test to see who would get swept up in this, to look for the easiest school of fish to pool in together. That's a direct threat. You'd want to remove that immediately. So they might get scooped up, and if they disappear, would anybody even know? Maybe a family member, but just generally in society, nobody would even know they're gone. And you look at that, if you put them in those locations, what would they be there for? Would they be there for labor, like a labor camp to help us produce new goods? Because we're going to need a labor supply that is going to work for nothing or close to foreign wages in developing countries. Now you sweep up all those people like those giant, what you just showed me over there, the prison cells in El Salvador. What if they had something like that here with those same people swept up that are going to be felony for life individuals would get $2 an hour? That'd be on the same pay scale as somebody else overseas. We could bring the manufacturing home, and all those violent offenders would be put into work camps. Now, would it last indefinitely? Probably not. Will the ones in El Salvador be there for? I don't think so. Would the prison camps across, World War II and multiple countries afterward? No, it only lasted 7 to 9 years, and people were out after that. But nothing's going to last forever. These are just chapters of history. And if you thought the Berlin Wall, I saw some crazy pictures of the Berlin Wall, people thought that was going to be forever, and it wasn't. It was, 40 years, and then it came down. There's always going to be an end to it. So during this transition phase, could we not use violent offenders across the United States, rope them in using AI, the ones who are the greatest threat anyway to a new burgeoning system, and get them to be the actual catalyst to spur the economy for the new system that they will take no part in? Maybe that's the way the artificial intelligence has already deemed it as so. I'll leave it there. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, tonight. Ransom, any last thoughts?
No, I think only the last thought I would have is really, we keep having these shows weekly, and though everything may work out perfectly with rainbows and all of that stuff, or it might not. So why not just be prepared so that at least that level of worry is gone out of your mind, and then you can deal with some of the other scenarios that unfold in civilization right now. But other than that, I think it's a good idea to grow your own food, fix your own stuff, and plot out your own future aside from all of these government plans and trends that are happening in the world.
And keep your unicorn rainbow crap out of my Thanks so much, man.
All right, peace out.
Peace.